Excellent.
Yesterday, the House of Commons will debate the introduction of vaccine passports for some venues, amongst other things. And joining us live in the studio is Conservative MP for Lichfield, Michael Fabricant. Thank you for joining us this morning. So,
I'm staying away from Patrick.
I know.
I'm getting a bit sceptical as to how close I should be to this morning. Tell us how you're going to vote and what you make of all of this, because let's be honest, 80 plus potential rebellion, not looking good for the Prime Minister.
No, it's not looking good, but I think it's a bit of a free hit, actually, for a lot of Conservative MPs, because they know that Labour are going to support this. And I think that if Labour was saying, no, we're opposing it, and all the opposition parties were opposing it, I think there would be a much smaller rebellion, if I'm honest with you. I think also it has a little bit to do with one or two MPs. I was about to say I was at a drinks party last night, but I think that's legal. I'm not sure about that, oh dear. But anyway, and one colleague of mine who's voting against it said that, well, it'll close cinema, well, not close cinemas, but cinemas, you know, you'll have to do it all and all the rest of it. And that's not the case. I think people don't quite understand. The legislation is not actually very onerous. I've got a crib sheet here, a bit of paper.
Here we go.
Well, no, it's just because I need to remember what it was. It only applies actually to nightclubs if it's a hot and steamy environment.
Oh, wow.
We like hot and steamy
A
environments.
nightclub isn't hot and steamy. It's not much of a nightclub.
Well, that's true. Indoor unseated venues, which have more than 500 people, well, there are very few unseated venues. Outdoor unseated venues of 4,000 people. And raves of over 10,000 people. I mean, come on. I mean, so it doesn't apply to pubs, doesn't apply to shops, doesn't apply to supermarkets. Hardly anyone's going to be affected. The other thing, by the way, is you don't have to have. I mean, I do recommend that everyone gets their vaccine and gets the booster and everything, but you don't have to, as long as you've had a COVID test, which I know you guys do.
Yes.
You've got to get yours done quickly. You know, as long as you've had a COVID test in the last 48 hours, then that's fine. But as I say, for most venues, most settings, as they like to talk about nowadays, it doesn't even apply anyway,
so
this
you're voting
legislation.
for vaccine passports in particular?
Well, it's not vaccine passports.
To be brought into those particular venues?
Yeah, but it's not vaccine passports. You either have to be vaccinated or a lateral flow test. But it's only for... Well, I can only think of a nightclub that it would actually apply to. It doesn't apply to cinemas, pubs or theatres or anything. So 99% of people are just not going to be affected by this legislation anyway. So you could ask, not that I'm doing your job for you, you could ask, well, what's the point then? And I would just say, well, it does slow up the spread of Omicron slightly, which is what we need, because we're trying to get everybody to get the booster vaccination.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are concerned that it could be a bit of a slippery slope. I mean, we already saw today Sajid Javid coming out and saying that now the definition of fully vaccinated will probably end up being 3 jabs. All right, OK, fine, you're saying that you can have a test as well, but it's a shorter step, isn't it, once you've introduced the vaccine passports, to change that element of it?
Well, that is
there are concerns there.
That is one of the arguments from some of my colleagues, and I accept that, you know, but I'm voting for the very tip of it. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for all legislation, and if it is the top of a slippery slope, or whatever the phrase is, then I might not vote for the next lot of legislation. We'll have to see what it is. As far as the 3 vaccine thing is concerned, look, you know, I think we're hoping that by the end of this year, I think more realistically the end of January, everybody who could be vaccinated, you know, could be. So, yeah, well, if they say, well, we've got to have 3 vaccines or a lateral flow test, again, only for this limited list of places, which only seems to be nightclubs.
So you've so far been very pragmatic in pointing out exactly what you're voting for and the practical effects and how many people it's going to affect. But what do you make of the sort of libertarian argument and the argument around actually the concept of freedom of choice and all that kind of thing?
Well, I'll tell you what, Mercy.
Some people would say true conservatives wouldn't be going down this road at all.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, this is exactly like the smoking ban. Because I'm a libertarian, but I voted to ban smoking in pubs and restaurants and all that. And I remember a colleague of mine said, Mike, you're the great libertarian. How comes you're voting for this? Because that's not very libertarian. And I say, well, I also need to have the liberty, if you like, to breathe clean air. Because I don't smoke, and we did discuss, I think, last interview what I did smoke, but that was a long time ago. And I think the statute of limitations now means I won't get arrested. I'm assuming that. There could be the police. Oh, God, the police are out. But no, I mean, it's people shouldn't have to be infected by other people. Now, you know, it's not 100% perfect, the vaccine, we know that. Some of the Omicron variant escapes the vaccine, but it does reduce it. I just want us to get back to normal life as quickly as possible. And the more people who are vaccinated or get these lateral flow tests, more likely we're going to get back to natural life again.
Do you think we're actually doing this because Boris Johnson is scared of Omicron, or do you think he was scared of being well and truly under the cosh with the Christmas party stuff and a bigger picture thing going on, and he's thought, look, here's a way of maybe me trying to unite the nation and, frankly, keep that stuff out of the headlines? No. Do you think this is all about
I
Omicron?
think it's all to do with the fact that he almost lost his life.
Really?
It was that serious. It really was touch and go that he'd have been put on a ventilator. And I know that affected him deeply. So for all his jokey, you know,
he's aware
he's
of...
been traumatised by that experience.
What have you spoken to him about that, I take it? Yeah.
And so it should be. Anybody who's, you know, goes through a life or death experience is going to be affected by it, and he doesn't want to see others affected in the same way. Too many have died already.
I mean, do you think, though, that doesn't necessarily sit that well with the idea of there being Christmas parties in Downing Street, though, does it?
Well, was it a Christmas party? I mean, you know, if you guys, at the end of a long day, sit down and have a drink, is that called a party? I don't know. How do you define a party? Look, it's being investigated. He says it wasn't a party.
Yeah.
He says, as far as he can see, and all the advice he's got, you know, nobody... I mean, look at that latest Daily Mirror thing yesterday. Oh, you know, he was doing a Zoom quiz.
Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with that? I did Zoom quiz. Everybody's done Zoom quizzes. We've been so bored in
is, you know, the rules were different for other people. I think that's the point.
Yeah, but he
we're
wasn't
trying
breaking the
to
rules.
make.
And Zoom quizzes are perfectly legal. You can't... Can I just tell your audience, I'm going to do my favourite trick of looking straight to camera. You cannot catch COVID on Zoom. You cannot catch Patrick's COVID, which I fear he may have, by watching this programme.
No,
Well,
no.
yeah,
It might make you ill in other ways, but...
he was, of course, sitting next to other people. But let's not preempt whatever investigations are going to take place. We will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure,
Always
as ever.
a pleasure to have you, Michael Fabricant, there.